and welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian and homeschool mom, and in this video I'm going to cover Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or the Sorcerer's Stone in the US. I did a whole introductory video on J.K. Rowling and why I'm covering this. Basically, it comes down to they're still very popular, still very decent books, and if you want to not support J.K. Rowling's bigotry and her craziness, borrow them from your public library if you don't already own them, or buy them used, even possibly from your public libraries, used bookstores. You support your libraries, or any used bookstore. They're everywhere because people are getting rid of them because they're children's books and J.K. Rowling is crazy. So they're still decent books. So the basic themes of the Harry Potter book, if you are not familiar with them, are it's a coming of age story, it's a hero story, and it's very much boarding school fiction. Those are the three kind of main themes that are running through these books, all of which I was interested in at 17 when I actually read them, and after being dragged into the film by family, which I will cover the film. Different thing. Decent film, highly summarized. I will get into the rest of the films as well. So this book came out in Britain in 1997, and it came out in the US in 1998. Which, oddly enough, if you do the math, and yes, I will mention something in the second book, J.K. Rowling does actually give you a timeline here, whether on purpose or accidentally. These books' storyline would actually end in 1998. So when it came out in the U.S. as Sorcerer's Stone, that's the other thing. In the Britain, it's called Philosopher's Stone because the Philosopher's Stone is a thing. In alchemy, in historic alchemy, it was the elixir of life, and turning base metals into gold was something they were striving for, including great minds like Isaac Newton, who were, yes, very much into alchemy, which is the early precursor to chemistry and physics, a little bit. So it was early sciences. But in the US, because of a marketing team, Scholastic maybe thought American kids were stupid. They changed it to the Sorcerer's Stone. The other thing is J.K. Rowling also, is people know, is Joan Rowling. That is her name. They changed it to J.K. because this is very much marketed to boys. So obviously everybody's read it. It's boys and girls, but they didn't think a book by Joan Rowling would attract boys. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But again, marketing decisions. So let's get into this book. This is the world building book. So this is where you're introduced to your main characters. You have the title character, Harry James Potter, who at the beginning of the book, he's a baby. His parents have been killed. He's about a year old. He's abandoned at his human aunt and uncles. You, as the reader, know he's a wizard because of the characters. The first character literally you're introduced to is my favorite in the book series, which is Professor Minerva McGonagall, who is the Transfiguration professor at the school and the deputy head mistress. So she's second to Dumbledore, who is the second character you meet, at least main character, though I think you interact a little bit with Vernon Dursley early on, and the Dursleys, which are Harry's aunt, uncle, and his cousin Dudley. Dudley is a very spoiled baby at this point, and his aunt Petunia. So those are his family. Vernon, Petunia, and Dudley Dursley, the Dursleys. And then you're also introduced to Albus Dumbledore, who is the wizard, who's the head of the school and a bit of a radical. So, and then you're introduced to Rubeus Hagrid, who is a half giant and ends up being one of the teachers. He's the groundskeeper at the time. So those are the main characters that you're introduced to in the first chapter. And then Harry is a baby. And then it jumps to 11 years later, where Harry is now 11 years old. So is his cousin Dudley. They're the same age. It's around Dudley's birthday. He's going to be going off to Smeltings, I think is the name of the school. It's his father's alma mater, and it's a fancy British boarding school. And Harry's going off to some other, I think Stonewall High is the name of the school for people who are disturbed because they think Harry is disturbed because strange things happen around him because, he's a wizard. So it kind of, stranger things start happening around Harry. You kind of get the thing, his aunt tries to cut his hair and it always grows back. And he always stubbornly still has to wear glasses. But you see his personality. He's very much the outcast in his family, wearing his cousin's old clothes. And then he starts getting these letters delivered by owls, and they won't stop coming, and his uncle and aunt freak out, and they end up in order to avoid everything, because his aunt and uncle know what's going on. They know he's supposed to go off to wizarding school. He's 11. They suspect this. His Aunt Petunia is very aware of what's going on, because it was her sister, who is Harry's mother, who went off to Hogwarts. So they try to hide from it, but Hagrid comes and essentially rescues Harry, takes him off to get his school books. He realizes, yeah, 1, you're famous, 2, you're a wizard, and 3, yeah, Daddy was a trust fund kid. Yeah, James Potter came from money. So now Harry has inherited all of this money. So he has quite a bit of gold hidden under London. So he's able to buy his school books and realize he's a wizard. And then he briefly goes back for about a month, I think. Oh, yeah, about a month, because it was the month of August, because they don't start school until September. And he gets to London and gets to the train station and runs into the other main family characters in the books, which is the Weasleys, who are a old wizarding family, full of redheads, and always very, very poor because they're nice people. But again, despite being very, very poor, they have distinguished lineage. They are, I believe they start mentioning, this is kind of common, I think, in Britain and medieval stuff, where they're of the elite family lines. Despite the fact that they're looked down upon, they are still of the elite family lines of pureblood wizards. So he runs into this family, which you have Molly Weasley, which is the mother, Arthur, which is their father, and then some of the children, because there are multiple children. Percy, who is currently the oldest, still in school, the twins, Fred and George Weasley, Ron, who becomes Harry's best friend, and his little sister Jenny, who's not going to school quite yet, because she's, I believe, 10 in this book, and Ron is 11, and I believe his brothers are 12 or 13, I think, at this point. That's the twins, and I can't remember how old Percy is. Percy is, I believe, in his 6th year, so he's about 16-ish at this point. So he gets on the train. The twins actually realize who he is, because he has a lightning scar on his forehead from where Voldemort, he who should not be named as they refer to him, tried to kill him and didn't, and it backfired. That is kind of explained to him. It's like, okay. But he gets on the train, he meets Ron. He also are introduced to two other main characters that come in. Hermione Granger, who is a muggle born similar to Harry's mother. Her parents are dentists. And Neville Longbottom, who is not brought up, though he's an important character. He's a chubby little boy from a long lineage of pureblood wizards. His parents, however, you find this out in later books, were tortured by the bad guys and are essentially locked in the hospital because they were tortured to insanity. So those are the main characters on the train, and they get to Hogwarts and they go through a whole bunch of different things. You meet the Sorting Hat, which puts them into the 4 separate houses of Gryffindor, Slytherin, Hufflepuff, and Ravenclaw. Those are the 4 houses. I'm guessing it's similar to how, I'm not familiar with British boarding schools, I'm guessing they have dormitories and they're very specific, and how they sort them into dormitories, I don't know. Not British and don't do boarding schools. So, and the other character you get introduced to is the main teenage villain, so to speak, which is Draco Malfoy. He's, again, of an elite family. They're very, very rich and very, very stuck up. And then he has 2 cronies, Crabbe and Goyle, I think. again, complete idiots, but they follow Draco around because him and his dad are far more powerful than they are. So those are the characters you kind of meet. She does name various other students at different points. That's Rowling, who's writing the book. And they get sorted into the houses, and it kind of flows into just kind of introducing the different teachers, from McGonagall to Dumbledore to, you see Hagrid a little bit. You see Flitwick, who is their charms teacher. Sprout, who is the herbology teacher. You briefly see them learning how to fly, though this teacher is never, I think it's Hitch. She's never brought up again. Really, I don't think she's ever involved again in the books. So you kind of get a feel for the world and the classes. You also get introduced to our main antagonist teacher, Severus Snape, and then the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, who is Quirrell. And then you notice weird things are going on there. Snape automatically hates Harry. He's the potions teacher. Nobody quite knows why he despises Harry. Harry doesn't understand. Turns out he hates his dad for slightly good reasons and was in love with Harry's mother, but you don't know that at this point. So it follows them through school and different things. Harry ends up on the Quidditch team, which is the wizard sport where they're flying on broomsticks, and he's basically in charge of catching a very little gold ball called a snitch. Or, yes, I think it's a snitch or a spitch. It's been a long time since I've read this book. It's been a while, but essentially it's a tiny little gold ball. So that flies because, of course, it's wizards and they're on broomsticks and things fly. So eventually you see Harry is popular. He has friends. Hermione Granger interacts with him with an incident with a troll. They also find out that this Sorcerer's Stone, or Philosopher's Stone, the original thing, is hidden in the castle because Dumbledore was friends with the guy who created it, Nicholas Flamel. And that's the mystery that they're following around later in the books. And Hermione starts helping them because they've become friends because of the troll incident. Essentially, Ron and Harry save her from a troll, and they bond over this. So, and that's kind of the rest of the book. They're trying to find this, who is trying to steal this stone that can provide the elixir of life and essentially bring Voldemort back. And that's what they figure out, because Harry ends up getting in trouble because of Malfoy, and ends up, they're sent on detention into the Dark Forest, and they essentially find Voldemort drinking the blood of a unicorn, and centaurs are brought in. That's the other thing that's slightly introduced, and then you don't really see them again. But that is the basics of the book. It ends with Harry, Ron, and Hermione going through different trials, showing their strengths to get this stone. So Ron conquers a giant chess set that has been brought alive by McGonagall. And then Harry helps, because he knows how to fly, to capture the key to move forward, because of his flying skills. And then I think Hermione also helps them figure out how to escape the first problem, which is squeezing plants. And then Hermione's last thing is to help them, basically her and Harry are left to pass a riddle, which is what Snape puts in, and that's actually kept out of the books, which is sad. She goes back to help Ron, who's been knocked out when they were passing the chess net. Harry goes further and finds Quirrell rather than Snape, who's been possessed by Voldemort and is using the Mirror of Estet. I'm mispronouncing this. Essentially, it's a mirror that shows you what you want. And Harry had run into that earlier, using an invisibility cloak that was Dumbledore gave to him. You don't know. It's just given to him at Christmas. It was his father's. And there's a whole big history with that I will not get into because it's not involved in this book. We're looking at this book. So it is foreshadowing, but again, this book. So Harry argues with Quirrell. Quirrell touches him and burns his hands because he's possessed by evil, and Harry's mother killing her, basically sacrificing herself for her child, makes him pure of heart. And essentially, Harry's able to get the stone because he doesn't want to use it. And that's the trick of the mirror. Dumbledore ends up rescuing him. He falls unconscious because Quirrell basically keeps trying to attack him because he has the stone in his pocket. And Quirrell, basically Voldemort wants it. And Harry passes out and wakes up in the hospital, recovering from basically apparently nearly dying. And it's kind of explained, it's like they destroyed the Philosopher's Stone. Flamel's him and his wife are going to die, but they're very, very, very old. So it doesn't matter because they're very, very, very old. So, and then essentially that's kind of how the book ends. Harry's defeated the evil. He kind of understands a little bit more, and he gets back on the train and goes back to the Dursleys for reasons, again, Dumbledore doesn't explain. You do find out later, and Dumbledore regrets not telling him because he's 11, but that's kind of how this book ends. It's a very good book. It very much is world building. It does a basic explanation of this is the Wizarding world. This is some of the background of Harry's character, and you get introduced to most of the main cast of characters in this book. As books goes on, they introduce various different ones, but this is the core cast, with the exception of Luna Lovegood, who's introduced, oddly enough, not until I think book 5, which is late, but she's becomes a major character in the books. So that is it for Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or Sorcerer's Stone if you're in the US. I would love to get a copy of the Philosopher's Stone. Heck, I'd love to get, if I could find them used, an entire set of the British copy, because these have been Americanized. I'd love to read the British, but again, I used. So I enjoyed these books, but of course I enjoyed that genre. And they're good books. I mean, the first 4 particularly are kind of great for the kids, because it's magical worlds, it's a hero story, it's a kind of coming of age story. In and of themselves, they're great books outside the author. I know there's been some controversy of them not being inclusive enough, but again, J.K. Rowling's a white woman. She's writing from her own point of view. So going into, not to mention she can't make the story more complicated than it already is. So she has to focus on her core characters, who, yes, happen to be white people, because that's what Rowling is. And it would be difficult for her to write from the point of view of a person of color, because she has no familiarity with that. I don't know much more than that of the background, because I don't follow her on Twitter, or don't follow her at all, and I was not paying attention. I didn't get that entrenched into the world. I was not a Harry Potter fanboy. I enjoy the books. My father got them from the 3 new ones from gas stations, which showed you how popular these were. And again, I didn't enjoy the last 3 books. They ended up boring me. And oddly enough, after the 4th book, I predicted a lot of what happened, at least the early parts of how it started. So, and I didn't like the 5th book. It ended up in the closet because I did not like that book. But again, it's a good story. Specifically, this book is a very good story. This is one of my favorite in the series. It's the introduction, and it's fun. It's still very light. So that is Harry Potter and the Sorcerers or Philosopher's Stone. Again, a great book. Buy it used if you don't already own it. But that is it for this review. If you like my reviews, I am going to be doing the rest of the books and the films of Harry Potter. I've done quite a few other book reviews. I have more book reviews in the pipeline, including eventually the Rick Riordan series that I will get to, and a couple of other far better fantasy stories, including one of my favorite authors, which is Tamora Pierce, far more female warrior books, which is something I would introduce to my daughter possibly before this, depending on her abilities and reading. But I also do a bunch of homeschooling stuff and hopefully more travel stuff. So if you like what I have to say, like my book reviews, like and subscribe, and check out more of my videos. Thank you.